Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving into the New Leaders 100-Day Action Plan. It's the fifth edition by Bradt, and Lawler,
Right.
published in 2022,
Yeah.
and it's considered a must-read for new CEOs and anyone transitioning into a leadership role. We're gonna extract the key insights and strategies that you can use, whether you're leading a team,
Yeah.
a company, or even just trying to navigate a new project.
This book, it doesn't waste any time getting to the point. It starts with a pretty alarming statistic. 40% of executives
Oh, wow.
fail within their first 18 months.
Yeah.
That's a stark reminder that even seasoned professionals need a solid plan when they step into a new leadership role.
Definitely makes you stop and think, doesn't it? It's
Yeah.
not just about having the skills and experience. It's
Yeah.
about navigating those first few months effectively.
Yeah.
The book calls this period a crucible of leadership, which sounds intense.
Yeah.
What exactly do they mean by that?
It's that initial phase where a new leader is under intense scrutiny.
Right?
They're forming relationships, setting expectations,
Yeah.
and establishing their credibility.
Okay.
It's a make or break time.
Yeah.
And the choices you make during this period have a huge impact on your long-term success.
Okay, so how do you avoid becoming a statistic? What does the book suggest for making it through that crucible?
The authors lay out a framework they call the 4 pillars of success.
Okay.
First, you need to get a head start.
Okay.
Don't wait until day 1 to start thinking about your strategy.
Okay.
Second, manage the message.
Okay.
Every action and word
Oh.
communicates something.
Uh-huh.
So be intentional about what you're projecting.
That makes sense. You're setting the tone from the very beginning. What are the other 2 pillars?
The third pillar is setting direction and building the team.
Okay.
You need to quickly establish clear goals
Yeah.
and create a cohesive team that's aligned with your vision.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, the fourth pillar is sustaining momentum and delivering results.
Okay.
It's not enough to have a good plan. You need to execute it
Right.
and achieve tangible wins early on to build credibility and maintain momentum.
So it's a mix of preparation,
Yeah,
communication
yeah.
strategy,
Yeah.
and execution.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty comprehensive. But there's one thing that jumped out at me when I was looking through the book.
Okay.
This focus on culture as a leadership tool.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about fitting into an existing culture, but
Yes.
actually shaping and evolving it.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's a fascinating approach. The book argues that culture isn't just something you inherit. It's something you can actively influence as a leader.
Okay.
And they introduce this really practical framework called BRAVE,
Okay.
which stands for behaviors, relationships, attitudes, values, and environment.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How would a leader actually use this BRAVE framework? It sounds a bit abstract.
It's about taking a step back
Yeah.
and assessing those 5 elements of the organization's culture.
Okay.
What are the dominant behaviors? How are relationships structured?
Mm.
What are the prevailing attitudes and values?
Okay.
And how does the physical environment reflect or influence the culture?
Yeah.
Once you have a clear understanding of these elements,
Right.
you can start to think about how you, as a leader, can influence them.
So you're not just adapting to the culture, you're actively trying to nudge it in a direction that supports your vision and goals.
Exactly. It's an ongoing process. In the beginning, aligning your leadership style with the existing culture is important for building trust and credibility.
Uh-huh.
But as you gain influence, you can start to identify areas where the culture might need to evolve
Right.
to support new challenges and opportunities.
Now that's what I call leadership. Thinking about culture not as a fixed thing, but as something that can be molded and shaped.
Yeah.
But before we get too deep into changing the world, let's talk about communication. I imagine that's crucial, especially in those first 100 days.
Absolutely. Communication is key throughout the entire transition, but it's especially important in the beginning.
Okay.
The book actually recommends crafting what they call an entry message
Oh,
before you even start.
an entry message before day 1. What could you possibly say when you haven't even stepped foot in the office?
That's where the fuzzy front end comes in.
Okay.
This is that period after you've accepted the offer, but before your official start date.
Fuzzy front end. It's not a term you hear every day.
Right.
What kind of things can a leader do during that time to shape their entry message?
It's a golden opportunity to gather information, test assumptions, and start building relationships.
Okay.
You can meet with key stakeholders, review documents, and familiarize yourself with the company's culture and challenges.
Right.
This helps you craft an entry message that's aligned with the organization's needs and your vision for the future.
So you're not walking in blind on day one. You've already done some reconnaissance and have a sense of the landscape.
Mhm.
But the book also says to get your message vaguely right immediately, which sounds a bit counterintuitive. What do they mean by that?
It's a brilliant piece of advice. You want to have a clear direction from the get-go,
Mm-hmm.
but you also need to be flexible and willing to adapt as you learn more.
Yeah.
The first 100 days are a time of intense learning,
Uh-huh.
and your initial assumptions might need to be adjusted as you gain experience and gather feedback.
It's about being prepared, but also being open to new information.
Yes.
And being willing to adjust your course as needed.
Right.
That's great advice for anyone, not just new leaders.
Yeah.
So you've got your entry message,
Okay.
you've done your homework, and
Yeah.
you're ready to hit the ground running. But how do you actually start making things happen and generating those early wins that the book talks about?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
The book shifts gears
Mm-hmm.
and dives into strategic action, focusing on building momentum and achieving early wins within those first 100 days.
Okay.
And it all starts with establishing a burning imperative.
A burning imperative. That sounds dramatic. What exactly is that?
It's a shared, compelling goal that truly drives the team forward. It's not just a top-down directive.
Right.
It's something that everyone is passionate about and feels invested in.
Mm.
This burning imperative should be ambitious and meaningful,
Yeah.
and it should be collaboratively defined so that everyone feels ownership.
So it's about finding that common purpose that unites and energizes the team. But how do you go from a big, inspiring goal to concrete action? How do you actually make it happen?
That's where the book introduces the concept of milestone management.
Okay.
It's a systematic approach to breaking down those ambitious goals into smaller, actionable steps and tracking progress along the way.
So it's about creating a roadmap with clear markers along the way. What are some of the key elements of this milestone management approach?
It involves identifying key milestones that mark progress toward those bigger goals.
Okay.
You need to assign clear ownership and accountability for each milestone,
Right.
making sure everyone knows who's responsible for what. And it's crucial to establish a regular cadence for reviewing progress, addressing challenges, and celebrating wins. This keeps the team focused and motivated.
It sounds like a proactive approach rather than just hoping for the best
Yes.
and reacting when things go wrong. It emphasizes planning, communication,
Right.
and accountability. But what about empowering the team? Does the book talk about that?
Absolutely. The book is all about effective delegation,
Okay.
which is crucial for achieving those milestones and building a high-performing team.
Yeah.
It's about giving your team the direction, resources, and authority they need to succeed, but also holding them accountable for results.
So it's about finding that balance between providing support and guidance
Right.
and giving people the space to own their work and make decisions.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. But we've been talking about teams and goals and milestones, and I'm curious about the actual people involved. I imagine putting together the right team is pretty high up on the priority list for any new leader. What does the book have to say about that?
You're right. Building a high-performing team is crucial,
Yeah.
and the book dives deep into this topic. It emphasizes that it's not always about making sweeping personnel changes right away.
Okay.
Sometimes it's about optimizing the existing team by clarifying roles and responsibilities.
So it's about figuring out who's already on the bus and making sure they're in the right seats, so to speak. How do you go about doing that?
They introduce a framework called ADPT, Acquire, Develop, Encourage, Plan, and Transition.
Okay.
It's a comprehensive approach to talent management
Mm-hmm.
that starts with assessing the existing team and identifying any gaps.
Interesting. So it's a blend of bringing in new talent if needed,
Yeah,
but also nurturing and developing the people you already have.
precisely.
Yeah.
And a key part of that is aligning individual strengths,
Okay.
motivations,
Yeah.
and fit with the organizational roles.
Mm.
You want to make sure people are in positions where they can truly excel and contribute their unique talents.
That sounds like a recipe for a happy and productive team. But doesn't that also create a potential for chaos? How do you keep everyone aligned and moving in the same direction when everyone's off doing their own thing?
The book emphasizes the importance of aligning individual goals with the overall goals of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
It circles back to that burning imperative.
Right.
If everyone is truly invested in that shared goal,
Yeah.
it creates a sense of unity and purpose.
Okay.
It's not just about individual achievement, it's about collective success.
It's about creating a shared vision that everyone can rally around.
Yes.
That makes sense. But we're running out of time for this part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Before we move on, are there any key takeaways from this first section that you want to emphasize for our listener?
The book really drives home the point that those first 100 days are a crucible.
Yeah.
It's a time of intense learning, adaptation, and action.
Yeah.
It's about being prepared, but also being flexible.
Yeah.
Being decisive, but also compassionate.
Yeah.
And it's about remembering that leadership is a journey, not a destination.
I love that. It's about embracing the challenges and the learning opportunities that come with stepping into a new leadership role. We'll be right back with more insights from the New Leader's 100-Day Action Plan after a short break. And we're back with more from the New Leader's 100-Day Action Plan. Before the break, we were talking about building high-performing teams.
Right.
And I'm curious about the book's take on those initial conversations with team members. How do you go beyond the typical getting to know your small talk and really understand what's going on beneath the surface?
The book offers a practical approach called the onboarding conversation framework. It's designed to go beyond superficialities and delve into individuals' perceptions and expectations. The authors suggest asking questions like, what strengths and capabilities are most important for success in this role? Or, what are some things that are considered untouchable within the organization?
Untouchable. You mean like sacred cows that nobody wants to question?
Exactly. Those things that might seem illogical or inefficient to an outsider, but are deeply ingrained in the company's culture. It's about understanding those nuances so you can navigate them effectively, especially in those early days when you're building relationships and establishing your credibility.
That makes sense. It's about reading between the lines and understanding the unwritten rules of the game. So you've had your initial conversations, you're starting to get a feel for the team and the culture. What about actually driving action and achieving those early wins we were talking about before the break? How do you translate that burning imperative into concrete results?
Clarity is paramount when it comes to execution. The book stresses the importance of clearly defining objectives, goals, strategies, and milestones. And it all comes back to that burning imperative. Every action, every initiative should be aligned with that overarching goal that unites and energizes the team.
So it's not just about checking things off a to-do list. It's about ensuring everything you do contributes to that bigger vision. That's a powerful concept. But I can imagine that for some leaders, the temptation to micromanage would be strong, especially in those early days when they're trying to prove themselves. Does the book address that?
It does, and it advocates for what they call milestone management as a way to break down goals into manageable steps and track progress without stifling the team's autonomy.
Milestone management. Tell me more about how that works in practice.
It involves identifying key milestones on the path to achieving those bigger goals. You assign clear ownership and accountability for each milestone, making sure everyone knows who's responsible for what. Then you establish a regular cadence for reviewing progress, addressing challenges, and celebrating wins. This keeps the team focused, motivated, and accountable without the need for constant oversight.
It sounds like a system that promotes both collaboration and individual accountability. It allows the leader to stay informed and provide support without getting bogged down in the day-to-day details. That's a valuable skill for any leader, especially one who's new to a role. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about talent. How do you go about building that dream team that's going to help you achieve those ambitious goals? Is it always about bringing in new people?
That's a great question. The book offers a refreshing perspective on this. It's not always about making drastic personnel changes right away. Sometimes it's about optimizing the existing team.
So figuring out who's already on the bus and making sure they're in the right seats, to use that analogy again. But how do you determine who's in the right seat and who might need to be shifted around?
The book suggests a simple but effective tool, mapping people on a grid based on their performance and how well their strengths align with their current role. Those who are high-performing and well-aligned are your stars. Those who are high-performing but misaligned might need to be moved to a different role where their strengths can be better utilized.
That makes a lot of sense. And what about those who are underperforming, regardless of their alignment? Does the book advocate for immediate dismissal?
Not necessarily. The book encourages honest conversations with those individuals about their strengths, motivations, and career aspirations. It's about exploring whether there might be a better fit for them within the organization. And if not, helping them transition to a role where they can truly thrive, even if it's outside the company.
That's a more humane approach than just showing people the door. It recognizes that sometimes people are simply in the wrong role, and a change can benefit both the individual and the organization. Now let's talk about communication. We touched on it earlier, but I want to delve a bit deeper. The book really emphasizes the importance of ongoing communication, especially during a transition. What are some of the key insights they offer beyond that initial entry message?
One of the key takeaways is the importance of establishing a clear communication cadence.
Okay.
This could involve weekly team meetings, monthly all-hands updates, or quarterly reviews with key stakeholders. The specific format will vary depending on the organization and the leader's style, but the principle is the same. Communicate regularly and consistently.
So you're saying it's not just about the content of the message, but also the frequency and the consistency with which it's delivered.
Exactly. And it's not just about broadcasting information. It's about creating opportunities for dialogue, encourage feedback, address concerns, and celebrate successes together. It's about creating a culture of open communication where people feel comfortable sharing their ideas and perspectives.
Speaking of different perspectives, the book also talks about the importance of being mindful of different communication styles. Some people prefer in-person conversations, others are more comfortable with email or instant messaging. How do you navigate that as a leader?
Especially with the rise of remote and hybrid work,
Right.
flexibility and adaptability are key. A quick video call can sometimes be more effective than a lengthy email chain. It's about understanding how your team members prefer to communicate and then tailoring your approach accordingly.
That shows respect for individual preferences and fosters a more inclusive communication environment. I also appreciate how the book emphasizes authenticity. It's not about putting on a corporate mask, but about letting your genuine enthusiasm and passion shine through.
Authenticity builds trust and fosters a more genuine connection. It's about being yourself while also being mindful of the impact your communication has on others.
So far, we've been focusing mainly on internal dynamics, team building, communication.
Setting goals and so on. But what about external factors? Does the book offer any guidance on managing those relationships outside your immediate team, like stakeholders, for example?
It absolutely does. The book emphasizes the importance of proactively engaging with key stakeholders,
Okay.
whether it's your boss, your board of directors, or other leaders across the organization. And it stresses the importance of building strong relationships with those stakeholders, even if they might not be your biggest fans initially.
I can imagine that winning over skeptical stakeholders can be a challenge, especially for a new leader who's still trying to find their footing. What strategies does the book recommend for building those relationships?
They suggest a two-step approach.
Okay.
First, seek their input and perspectives. Don't just present them with a fait accompli.
Right.
Engage them in the decision-making process. Listen carefully to their concerns and suggestions.
And show them that you value their experience and expertise. Then, once you've had a chance to process that information, come back with a clear plan of action that addresses their key concerns and demonstrates your commitment to their success as well as your own.
So it's about showing them that you're not just interested in pushing your own agenda,
Right.
but that you're genuinely interested in collaborating and finding solutions that work for everyone. That makes sense. But sometimes actions speak louder than words. Are there any real-world examples in the book that illustrate how to effectively manage stakeholders, especially those who might be initially resistant?
There are quite a few, actually. One that stands out is about a CEO who was brought in to lead a turnaround for a company with a reputation for terrible customer service. His burning imperative was to transform that reputation and make customer service a key differentiator.
That's a challenging situation. How did he approach it? Did he make sweeping changes right away?
He did make some significant structural changes, but he also understood the importance of bringing people along on the journey. Instead of just focusing on training programs or new policies, he actually restructured the entire customer service department.
Wow.
Separating it from the sales department where it had been buried, and creating a dedicated customer experience team that reported directly to him.
That's a bold move. It sends a clear message about the importance of customer service. But did he stop there?
Not at all. He also empowered the customer experience team to make decisions and resolve issues on the spot, rather than having to go through layers of bureaucracy. He provided them with the resources and training they needed.
Right.
And he created a culture where customer service was everyone's responsibility, not just the customer experience teams.
So it was a combination of structural changes, empowerment,
Mhm.
and a cultural shift. Did it work?
It did. Customer satisfaction scores skyrocketed,
Wow.
and the company's reputation for customer service was transformed. It became a key differentiator in the marketplace and contributed significantly to the company's turnaround.
That's a great example of how a leader can achieve a burning imperative by aligning structures,
Yeah.
empowering teams,
Yes.
and shifting the culture. It also shows how important it is to engage stakeholders, even those who might be initially resistant to change. By demonstrating a genuine commitment to customer satisfaction and involving employees in the process, he was able to win over even the most skeptical stakeholders.
Absolutely. It's about building trust,
Mhm.
demonstrating competence,
Right.
and delivering results. And it highlights the importance of thinking outside the box and challenging the status quo,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to those long-standing problems that everyone else has just accepted as the way things are.
It's about having the courage to ask, why are we doing it this way? And then finding a better way. That's what sets great leaders apart. They don't just accept the status quo, they challenge it and inspire others to do the same. But before we get too carried away with our own burning imperatives, we need to take a short break. We'll be back soon with the final part of our deep dive into the new leader's 100-day action plan. We're back for the final part of our deep dive into the new leader's 100-day action plan. We've covered a lot of ground, from setting direction and building teams to navigating those crucial early wins. But there's one area we haven't touched on yet that can be especially daunting for new leaders: managing boards of
Yeah,
directors.
you're right. That can be a whole different ballgame. The book offers some great advice on how to navigate those boardroom dynamics,
Okay.
starting with what they call the board two-step.
The board two-step. Is this some sort of secret handshake?
Not quite, but it does involve a bit of choreography. The first step is to proactively seek input and perspectives from your board members.
Okay.
Don't just show up with a fully formed plan and expect them to rubber stamp it.
Right.
Involve them in the decision-making process, even if you ultimately have the final say.
So it's about demonstrating that you value their experience and expertise, even if you don't always agree with them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the second step is to take that input seriously. Consider their suggestions and concerns, and then come back with a refined plan that addresses their key points.
Mm-hmm.
This demonstrates that you're listening,
Yeah.
that you're open to feedback,
Okay.
and that you're committed to working collaboratively.
It's about building trust and alignment, even if there might be initial disagreements. But what about the situations where the stakes are even higher? Like when a new leader is brought in to manage a turnaround or navigate a crisis, those situations require a different level of urgency and decisiveness. Does the book address those scenarios?
It does, and it emphasizes the importance of clarity,
Okay.
communication, and decisive action. In a crisis, speed is often essential, but it's not about making rash decisions. It's about gathering information quickly,
Yeah.
assessing the situation accurately,
Right.
and then taking swift action to mitigate the damage and get things back on track.
So there's no room for hesitation or second guessing in those moments. But how do you balance the need for speed with the need to be thoughtful and strategic?
It's a delicate balance. The book suggests establishing a clear decision-making process
Okay.
that involves key stakeholders, but allows for quick action when necessary. It also stresses the importance of communicating clearly and frequently throughout the crisis,
Yeah.
both internally and externally.
Transparency is key in those situations, isn't it? People need to know what's going on and what's being done to address the situation.
Absolutely. And that includes being honest about the challenges and the potential setbacks. People appreciate authenticity, even when the news isn't good. It builds trust and credibility, which are essential for navigating a crisis effectively.
That's a good reminder for any leader, not just those facing a crisis. Honesty and transparency are always the best policies. But I'm curious, does the book talk about what happens after those first 100 days are over? It's not like leadership suddenly becomes easy once you hit that milestone.
You're right, leadership is an ongoing journey. The book does touch on sustaining momentum and growth beyond those first 100 days.
Okay.
It talks about the importance of continuing to learn and adapt, to build strong relationships,
Right.
and to stay focused on the big picture.
It's about constantly evolving and refining your approach, isn't it? And recognizing that leadership is not a destination, it's a journey.
Exactly. And that journey is filled with challenges and opportunities. The key is to embrace those challenges,
Right.
to learn from your mistakes,
Yeah.
and to never stop growing as a leader.
Well said. I think we've covered the essential points of the new leader's 100-day action plan. This book offers a wealth of practical advice and insights, but I think what resonates most with me is this emphasis on leadership as a continuous process of learning and adaptation.
I agree. It's not about having all the answers on day one.
Right.
It's about having the humility to learn,
Mm.
the courage to adapt,
Yeah.
and the commitment to building a strong team and a positive culture.
It's about being prepared, but also being flexible, being decisive, but also compassionate, and always striving to be better. So for our listener, what's the one key takeaway we want them to walk away with today?
The most important message is that leadership is a journey, not a destination. It's a journey filled with challenges and triumphs, setbacks and breakthroughs. Embrace the journey, learn from every experience, and never stop growing. Whether you're leading a team at work, a family at home, or a community project, these principles can help you make a positive impact.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the New Leaders 100-Day Action Plan. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep leading with courage and authenticity.